Well, hello, as I'm sure you know by now, my name's Joe Powell. I am the Chief Executive of All Wales People First, and this is one of 4 video messages I promised I would give to the members every year as part of our mirror strategy, that's our business plan, to inform the members of the work of All Wales People First and what is going on. The first thing I want to say a big thank you to everybody is those who attended and took part in our strategy day on the 16th of October. A really important day. Not only is that designed to write our business plan, mirror strategy going forward, but it's also designed to help address some really critical problems within self-advocacy at the moment. Anybody involved in self-advocacy knows just how insecure potentially the sector is. We kind of all live to fight for another day at the moment, but there have been so many things politically, gaps in legislation, which has meant that getting self-advocacy recognised and funded at a local level has been a real challenge. The whole idea of the 2 events in Cardiff and Conwy on the 16th was to have a real proper look strategically at the role of All Wales People First and how we can strengthen the work we do with the local groups to protect and safeguard self-advocacy during these very difficult and these very challenging times. So that work is ongoing. So, don't underestimate the importance of the work that you've done. And on that note, our board of directors are also looking to make contact with local groups and the people who run the local groups as well, to try and also look at other ways All Wales People First can support groups in this journey forward, and other ways where strategically we can try and still make that case for self-advocacy. For anybody who's not aware, the problem I think with self-advocacy is it isn't clearly defined. It isn't clearly defined in terms of what it is. It's the kind of thing that is often down to a person's interpretation. What I think good self-advocacy is might not be what you think good self-advocacy is. So it's very hard, I think, sometimes for funders to know exactly what they're funding and exactly what this thing called self-advocacy is. And of course, in legislation, there is no real concrete understanding or definition of self-advocacy in the way we understand it, whereas for services like advocacy there are, which makes it much easier to fund. So we need to find a way to make sure at legislation level, I think, and in terms of implementation at local authority level, we need to really make sure that everybody understands why self-advocacy is important. And I think this all goes back to the Social Service and Wellbeing Wales Act. It all goes back to what we call our independent professional advocacy contracts, which often haven't made the distinction between advocacy and self-advocacy. Obviously, as I've said millions of times, self-advocacy, in my opinion, is the best form of advocacy. It's the ultimate preventative service. If we want people with learning disabilities to be equalled and take part in society and to be seen as people first, as we've all aspired to do, then the voice of people with learning disabilities has to be taken seriously. We need to be in a position where people look at the person with a learning disability in the eyes, not their support worker or their carer. In terms of the work on trying to safeguard self-advocacy, myself and the other self-advocates on the Learning Disability Ministerial Advisory Group, Sophie Hinksman, Michelle Williams and Lynn Evans, have also made a case for the funding of self-advocacy and generally represented how difficult the whole situation around all forms of advocacy have been right now. The Welsh Government have agreed to work with the Associated Directors of Social Services to put together a framework around advocacy to try and make it better and safeguard it for the future. All Wales People First are partners in this work. So we've had some stakeholder groups. We've employed Dawn Gullis to work on the project, which is fabulous. She's doing a fabulous job. She co-chairs our stakeholder group with myself. Some of you have been invited to that, or some of you have been taking part in that. And we've the ADSS have taken interviews at the members at AdFest, and at the moment we're collecting a lot of evidence, and we're hoping to go out quite soon to speak to members about their experiences. In the meantime, Kelly Stewart, our Policy and Communications Manager, is interviewing members to look at a thing called the most significant change. So basically, the bottom line is, what is the most significant change that self-advocacy has made for you? And Kelly's collecting that information to help make that case for self-advocacy. And I'm interviewing managers of groups at the moment to try and put together an idea of what ideally a self-advocacy group needs to run and to survive for the future, in the hope we can put this as part of the recommendations going forward to secure self-advocacy in Wales. What we don't know at this stage, obviously, is what power or teeth the framework has. So we can make the recommendations. What we can't guarantee is what's going to happen after that. Obviously, we have to try. Otherwise, we have no chance. We've got to try and do something, which is what we're trying to do. Hopefully, it will be implemented and we will just change the way advocacy is thought about and funded, and our problems will go away. If not, then there's going to be work in the new year for All Wales People First, and hopefully the movement behind us to then push for the implementation of that strategy so that it meets its full potential. The next thing I'm going to talk about is, some of you will have known about a member of ours called Jack Kavanagh. We've shared his story on Facebook and social media and our website. In a nutshell, Jack's a person with a learning disability who's been placed in a secure unit because the services he needs can't be provided. And he's a person who doesn't need to be in that secure unit, and he's a person who was put in a mental health facility when he doesn't have mental health problems. What of course is worrying about that is the fact that this is what the All Wales strategy of 1983 looked to get rid of the institutions. And on the 40th anniversary of the All Wales strategy of 1983, although there have been a lot of improvements and we've moved forward in lots of ways, the fact that these cases are happening, and there isn't just Jack, there's a few more I'm aware of, it's very, very serious, as I'm sure you can appreciate. But what Jack's case made me aware of more than anything, I knew sometimes it's very difficult for legislation written by the government to actually happen in the local regions. And this is because sometimes governments don't want to tread on local authorities' toes. The idea is that they write the legislation and the local authorities implement it. But sometimes there is a difference in understanding between the government and the local authorities in terms of what's realistic, or the health boards, what's realistic to actually deliver. So we have a big gap. Now, with an organisation like All Wales People First go in, we can often be told, well, we need to deal with the individual or the people who represent the individual. We won't deal with an organisation. So we've worked with the British Institute of Human Rights on a toolkit in which we hope to help people with learning disabilities and their family carers to go through a process of which they're equipped to make a human rights challenge should anything happen to them that isn't fair, that isn't right, and that shouldn't be happening under the Social Services and Wellbeing Wales Act or other laws and legislation that's supposed to protect people with learning disabilities. And it leads through a process of worst case scenario, that person being told how to take things to a judicial review. And a judicial review basically means you go to court to fight a decision that you feel is unfair. In an ideal world, it wouldn't get that far. In an ideal world, the services people need would just be delivered. The next best alternative to that would be you point out the human rights breach, and that in itself would change the outcome. But sometimes that hasn't been enough. And I think the only way we're going to change some of the decisions made at local level in some ways is to have the option of, in cases where no other options are viable, to be able to make that direct challenge in the courts, I'm afraid. And like I said, Jack Kavanagh's case, more than any other, made me acutely aware of this. I was aware, but I think it's not until you see a severe case like Jack's where the consequences of what's happened to Jack are so severe that the real potential impact, is brought home to you. So Jack has been an inspiration for this work. And we're going to go on Human Rights Day. Well, Human Rights Day is the 10th of December, but on the 11th, which is a Sunday, but on the 11th of December, we are going to present the first draft of this toolkit in Westminster, in the House of Lords. And our chair of the National Council, Tracy Austin, our vice chair, Sam Hall, will be presenting the toolkit and talking about it. So I'm going to be delighted to be there with them and to join them on the day. We also have Lucy Hinksman from Pembrokeshire People First there, because Pembrokeshire People First have also done a lot of work with the British Institute of Human Rights. And this toolkit is part of a human rights solution program that the British Institute of Human Rights are running. They've put a message out to any organisation, co-produce with us, do you want a human rights solution? What is it and how can we help you? And we put in a bid basically to try and work on this toolkit, and it was successful. So look out for social media on Monday the 11th of December, because we are going to be tweeting and Facebooking images from the event. And I think the last but one thing I'm going to say is that on the 16th of October, when we had the strategy day, we were supposed to have our annual general meeting. That couldn't take place because we didn't have enough members there, which means we weren't quorate. That means by law we can't go ahead. So we're going to have the meeting again on the 9th of January in Conwy in North Wales. Please don't worry about the details right now. They are going to be posted to you in Talkback. They're going to be advertised on social media. So if you can join us in Conwy, the Conwy Business Centre, on the 9th of January 2024, hopefully we will conclude our annual general meeting there. I just want to end my last message of this year by saying a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to everybody, all the members and everybody who views my channel. We all know that the times are difficult, and I think in terms of the campaigning we've done and the members' input, we've worked and fought really, really hard. We'll continue to do so. Unfortunately, that is part of the journey of self-advocacy. Sometimes speaking out doesn't always get you the results immediately. You've got to keep fighting and pushing for the long term. We're going to do that next year. I hope you're going to join us. Victory for self-advocacy. Merry Christmas. Have a safe holiday. And I really look forward, the team and I, to seeing you again and fighting and working with you in 2024.